Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now what you're seeing here are in-game captures I took this morning on board the RMS Titanic. This is Titanic Honour and Glory Demo 401. It's a playable taster of what's to come in the future, though as stated by the developers, this demo doesn't reflect the final visuals or gameplay for the full version. As it stands, this demo gives us access to 30% of the RMS Titanic in unprecedented visual and historical detail, which contains every first class, second class, third class and crew space that's been built so far. Again, those are words from Vintage Digital Revival, the team behind this stunning recreation. If like me you are fascinated by the history of the Titanic and enjoy pushing your PC hardware to the limits, perhaps even just one of those two in fact, then I'd recommend downloading this 12GB mega demo and maybe even making a one-time donation to support the development. There's also a VR demo available as well. It's still early days and the main focus here is exploration, but there's something truly incredible about being able to walk the decks of this ill-fated and iconic passenger liner in all her glory, especially when they look as good as this. Speaking of which, I'm using an i3-12-300 RTX 3050 and 16 gigs of 3200MHz dual channel RAM, along with a 1TB SATA SSD, and I'm running the demo with the very high settings. There are ray tracing and DLSS options which I've currently set to disabled. Everything else is on very high. Not the wisest decision because there will be some performance issues with a mid-range setup like this, but for the most part my frame rate held up fairly well. I did notice some graphical and performance issues, but I'd like to reiterate that this is a demo after all, and it's fair to assume that whenever the final release does come along, things might be very different. I must have played this about 10 times now in separate 20-minute intervals, and I'm still discovering little areas and rooms that I hadn't seen before. A word of warning, if you are looking to push the visuals further, then there are aforementioned ray tracing options to play with, but I'd avoid dialing up the RT Reflections bounces setting with DLSS off because otherwise this happens. DLSS is very welcome here. Choosing the quality option will mean that the sharpness and clarity is almost indistinguishable from native 1920x1080, yet the performance gains are huge. The indoor restaurant areas are particularly demanding, and so is the grand staircase. Enabling DLSS can help counteract or at least account for these frame dips. Performance might still drop, but not as significantly. For example, instead of going from 60 to 30 FPS, you might go from 100 to 70 instead, which is much more tolerable. I found that using balanced DLSS mode with every ray tracing option enabled and the bounces kept at 1 provide a nice mix of visual quality and performance, though leaving RT off and sticking with the quality DLSS option is probably how I'd keep things while I explore. Okay, so you've seen how wonderful this experience can look at 1080p, but now it's time for a low-end hardware test. You know me, no matter how demanding a game, playable experience, tech demo, or anything that requires a computer to run is, I'm all about inclusivity, and I simply need to know that all of my low-end hardware using friends out there can enjoy this wonderful demo as well. Time for the Athlon 3000G once again. Sorry. It's fair to say that some of the magic is definitely lost with the visual sacrifices we've had to make. I've opted for the low settings, though anti-aliasing is set to high because between the lower settings and 50% resolution scaling, the edges of objects look very jagged. This work in progress doesn't exactly command a high frame rate, and even with these settings there will be some areas that drop as low as 18 FPS. I haven't benchmarked with exact figures today because it is early days and the performance is very inconsistent. It differs literally from room to room. It's best to just download this for yourself and play around with the settings to see what works for you. If you've got a lower end PC, it can run and still look surprisingly decent even with the reduced quality settings, and if you've got a high end rig, it's definitely worth cranking everything up to very high at 1440p or 4K, because you'll be absolutely blown away. When I wrote in the title that I'd never seen graphics like this, I didn't just mean in the traditional wow that looks good sense, but also in the sense of historical accuracy as well. Everything is designed to look how it would have done in real life. It really is commendable and mesmerising in a sense to just walk around, and I just had to talk about it in today's video. that's all there is to this one. I wanted to see how good this can look and how well it would run on my mid-range setup. If you enjoyed it, leave a like down below, leave a dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I will see all of you in the next one.